G'day Nerfers, it's Jim here and welcome to Convo with the Creator. Today I have the father, the creator, the best of the best, the creator of HPA. Basically in the hobby, we talk about the next tier level of HPA. We have Spectre. Mate, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, Jim. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm feeling great. How about you?
I'm feeling pretty cold at the moment. It's pretty cold in my shed because it's absolutely raining outside.
Oh dear.
Mate, I just wanted to check in with you and just see what you've been up to lately. So let's just start way back from the beginning. So you started basically in the makerspace since about 2013, where you started on brass breaching and, you know, doing your long shots and things like that. Where you sort of touched your feet into LPA around that time. Can you tell me a bit more about this and your early days of actually being a modder in the community?
Yeah. Well, you're looking at like a very different scene to what you see today. Like back in the, the 2013, 2014, and even up to about 2015, 2016, you're looking at a lot more of the handmade mods compared to what you've seen and, what the hobby has evolved into today. Like in 2013, when I first started, it was basically unheard of for people to be bringing brass breeches to wars, and kits for these, for those long shots and whatnot were unheard of at all. Like the only write-up that existed when I started joining was Forsaken Angels and SG Nerf's brass breach guides, like the Angel breach and the original brass breach at SG Nerf, refined to make a full-length version. And that was like the top pinnacle of modding back then. So I took one look at it and went, hey, let's give it a go. And with using my dad's tools in his shed, like we were, messing around trying to make this breach. And my first brass breach was horrible.
Well, everyone's is.
Like,
everyone's
today's standards, but yeah, like it worked. So I consider it a partial success. And as I worked on breaches and whatnot, you learn the ins and outs of the systems and you see the inefficiencies and where things can be improved. And I thought, there's like 4 lengths of brass in here. Why don't we, try and cut it down? And about, late 2014, early 2015, I actually, I got a blue long shot in from the States, and I cut it up and made the first ever sleeper breach. So from that, I was able to make a write-up, and, all data seems to point to the fact that the sleeper breach is still one of, the competitive breaches on the market. It's really the only standard handmade breach that still exists.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just so much different to what, the Angel breach was. But at the same time, I couldn't have done it without knowing what the Angel breach was and how it worked. So, yeah.
And you sort of like touched into LPA around that same time, like creating using the XBZ tanks and trying to get a bit more power out of those long shots and other blasters as well.
Yeah, so Brisbane, predating me, Brisbane's been very notorious for its air blaster scene. There's an entire arms race culture just centered around air blasters because, we had some crazy people back in the 2013s. We had people that would like integrate little Kmart $10 compressors into the back ends of their B-bums, and it would be, you'd have like this little press switch on the side. You'd press it, it'd fill up to like 30 to 40 to 50 psi. You'd have a piece of PVC as a barrel, and it'd just go whoozumpa. And like I got invited to one of those events at the start of 2014, and all I had was my brass breech long shot and a Sam's Warehouse cheap, bloody dangerous air tank blaster because it was just so cheap and crap. And I was ridiculously outclassed there by these. Like it was still the pinnacle of jank, but it worked so well. And these air tank builds were hitting like 300 feet per second.
Wow.
And it was crazy fun because like all of these people were shooting like primitive tech and like pre-darts. Like these were hard tip darts back then. And
hard tip for 300 FPS. That would have left a mark.
Like we used to brag about what welts. It was Pain Olympics. And so you'd be like, without going into too many specifics, you'd be seeing everyone would be, showing off their welts to each other at the end of the day. It's like, oh, you got me on the knuckle, check this out. Or, like, check out this absolute shiner from a headshot. And it's such a completely different atmosphere to your typical family friendly games, because the competitive scene was there, but there was no edge at all. So it was like friendly competition, and everyone was trying to one up each other, but everyone that was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I want to try that. And then like I wasn't even the first person to do LPA or HPA in Brisbane. Like the first person to ever bring any sort of thing like that was a guy named Sean, who brought in this. It was a Stampede with a long shot stock. No, it was a Raven with a long shot stock and a Stampede front, and it had a Mega Missile tank, a Busby Mega Missile tank in the stock. It had this really smooth reverse action breach, and it was powered by HPA. So he'd done he got a gas regulator down to like, you know, Mega Missile pressures of 85 psi. He'd encased the plastic tank in this entire block of putty in the stock.
Would have been so heavy.
Oh mate, this thing had so much heft, but he'd like cycle the breach so smooth, and then he'd pull the trigger, and it was just, and it just flew so straight. Everyone in Brisbane was just like, I want it. And then that was one war, like he dominated that war because he was the first person to be able to have high refresh pop-off shots. Next war we come to, like people have invested in like fire extinguishers in backpacks.
Jesus, that sounds so dangerous.
They'd made custom fittings for fire extinguishers in backpacks, and then filled it off with like a bloody car compressor.
Oh gosh.
And like they got like, it was semi-automatic fed off a hopper. And so the game had been upped again, and they did a couple commissions of that, and I actually bought one of those rigs back then. So that was my first foray into LPA, but I didn't like the bulk, and so that was what really forced my hand in trying to find better solutions. So I bought myself a paintball bottle, and then I went through like more money than I can count, finding regulators that worked. Like there's cheap regulators that don't work. There's expensive regulators that are way too big and don't, like, they do the job, but they're inconsistent. And it's funny, like it all still, for all of us, you know, trying to avoid becoming paintball, we seem to find ourselves circling back to all the tech that paintball used. And so HPA nerf, I guess, can effectively be described in 2 words nowadays. It's not paintball.
So was that about 2015 when you I know you developed the Bolt Sniper?
Yes.
I used like an old Crossbolt platform. I think it was Crossbolt.
Actually, no, it was a Max Force Shadowhawk.
Oh, was it?
Those old spitball guns.
And
I actually grabbed like a Busby Big Blast tank, integrated it, made a nice cycling brass bolt action breech, and yeah, that was my first attempt at building an HPA LPA blaster. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot along the way, but like that has been the basis of like improvement for me. Like I keep coming back to bolt action. I for all my love of, you know, what's
there's something about that smooth cycling.
Yeah, it's like,
you know, that
click,
control. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah,
So that was way back in 2015, and that was that the light bulb moment? Like, aha! I want to get into HPA. I want to make this smaller, better, faster.
yes,
This is what I want to do.
Yeah, so like I'm a stubborn person. I can't actually bring myself to be wielding blasters that I didn't build. So even though I commissioned the LPA build and that a similar blaster from the people that made it, yeah, basically from there it was like, well, I've got this tech, but it's not my tech. I want to make better tech.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's been an uphill climb ever since, trying to like figure out what I can and can't do, and that works that way and that works, you know, like I've got a you know, social media full of all my successes, but I haven't documented all the failures.
Yeah, well, understandably. So is that where it's sort of, because I know like you created the Metal Xbz tank back December 2017.
Yes.
Now I remember seeing in your socials that it was actually designed, the original metal tank was actually designed to hold about 1,000 psi. What was the initial community reaction to something like that?
Like realistically, I think I was probably not experienced enough in design at that point, because the first iteration of the Metal Xbz design was what's the word I'm looking for? It was actually replicating the function of the original XBZ, which is like, yeah, it's a cylinder, and then there's a stem inside that just moves back and forth with pressure based on where the pressure is coming from. And I probably overcomplicated that by trying to replicate it. Whereas, like, prior to making the Spectre Xbz, I actually had done a supercore, which before I knew it was, or before I called it the supercore, I'd actually done 2 iterations of it in blasters, Death Blossom and Bloody Katana. And, I'd been very secretive about that for a long time because my mindset was completely different back then. It was more of a, if you don't understand it, I can't explain it to you. Yeah. Whereas nowadays it's more of a, if you don't understand it, I can explain it to you. So, I tried to improve upon it over time. Like Bloody Katana is actually the second blaster that took in a supercore design, and it was built around the similar, the understanding of quick exhaust valves, which the original LPA blasters I used were using. And so it again comes back to, learning what the tech I had, could do and getting back to it. So when I designed the first XBZ, the community reaction was mixed, because some people were like, well, why are you doing this? Because it's probably going to be inefficient. And those were people that were in the know. And the other people in the community were like, well, how does it go together and how's it going to work? And so a lot of feedback in such a short amount of time forced me to revise, the initial concept to something that used tech that I understood better, which was, the use of quick exhaust valves. And so I think because I was able to talk with, greater minds at that point and similar minds, I was able to make a product that would be more viable than my original concept. And that would have saved me a lot of heartbreak when the first iteration inevitably didn't work the way I wanted to.
And that's why having that great community feedback is such an important aspect of our hobby, because you put out a design that you thought would work, but there was some feedback from the community and they made it better and they helped you design a product that would be fit for purpose.
Yes.
And that's where you moved on to the V1, V2 and the V3 and finally to the Supercore at the moment.
Yes. So the Spectre Armaments and the Supercore are 2 completely different systems in their own vein. Like the Spectre Armaments is predated by the concept of the Supercore, as I mentioned. Like Bloody Katana, I think is a year older than the first Metal Xbz tank, and that's Supercore V2. So Supercore V1 is a year older than that. Supercore as a concept is 4 years old this year. So I'm very pleased, that one of my initial concepts in getting into, machining has become such a success. It's really humbling to see what has become of basically like a whimsy idea I had on a train on the way to university.
Well, that's awesome. And you can see your tech put into so many different blasters at the moment. Like, for example, I know you've got your ADHD blaster, which is on your wall there. I can see it.
ADHD is not on the wall.
Oh, isn't it? Oh, the green one? What's the green one?
The green one is Creme de la Creme.
Ah.
So if this is time for a shameless self-plug, I mean, what this is all
about. You've got
so
many of them, I can't keep up.
That's the problem a lot of people have had over the years. It's always been very difficult to try and keep up with me because I work too fast even for my own good. Like I have a lot of difficulty documenting all this. So this is Creme de la Creme, which is in all essences, it is the spiritual successor to ADHD. It combines all the features that ADHD had, which was basically semi-automatic operation, with programmable. So
very nice.
It integrates the FDL. Like I bought an FDL in December last year. I received it, a couple of days before New Year's and fell in love with it before I'd even seen the year out. And it's just such a beautifully compact blaster that it inspired me to build better blasters. And so, I sat down at my, CAD station for a little while, and Creme de la Creme came to be because I started tinkering again. Like, it's so, I don't know the word. It is again, it's humbling to see what else the community can do, because, what I've learned, like 2017 me thought he knew everything and didn't take advice from others. But 2020 me wants more from the community, and I want to be part of that community. It's awesome to see what they've done. Watching, looking at the wall behind you, knowing that, there are 5 different ways that you could do up that gear up recon, and all of them are completely unique. Like not just a supercore, like my supercore recon, not just, like the flywheel, the world recon. You've got your brass breeches, you've got your kit mods, and that's what I've loved about the community is we've gone from like one possibility per blaster to how many possibilities are there?
And that's the best thing about our hobby. And it's when you mod something, it's going to be unique to the individual modding it. Whether you get a drop-in kit from work or whoever else, or whether you design a brass breech or use a brass breech, or whatever you do, that's going to be unique to you. And that's your own kit. And that's what I find one of the best things about the hobby is no matter, even if some people have the same retaliator platform, it's going to be unique to that person in some way. Whether it's just the artificial mods that go on the top, like the tactical stuff or whatever it is, everything is unique to some person. And that's the thing I love about the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like the community is constantly evolving and never for the worse. I don't think I've like seen any platforms that have picked up in popularity that the community hasn't like completely thrown their weight behind. Like there's a lot of chops and changes as companies come and go over the years. But for the most part, the things that have survived are the things that the community has really poured their resources and their time and efforts into helping grow. Like, Drac and, those large personalities are so vital to the growth of the community because there's such a big voice for it. And it's cool to see, like, what even the smaller people do when someone like Drac throws their weight behind it or something like that, because the community thrives on itself.
Yep. And it's good to have those influencers supporting and endorsing designs that do work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the community it's a very interesting place because it's simultaneously the most accepting and least accepting community I've known of. Like we are incredibly stringent on like, blaster standards. Like I've seen so many things come up over the years, like, the Chris Vector Strife behind you as a really good example. Like that's one of the most divisive things in the community. Like the kits themselves, great. The development of the kits into something that is a mass producible, marketable product. Excellent. It's been overdone to hell. So there's a lot of people that are very tired of it. And the minute you show up with one in black, no one wants to do with you.
No. That's why mine's all orange and it's so comfortable to hold. Well, this is my Ultra Strife designed by Woody77. So it's just the best thing in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. Woody's a Perth local, isn't he?
He is, yeah. And I hope to get him on the Convo with Creator sometime.
Oh, yeah. That'd be an excellent conversation to have.
Now, not only do you make your own supercores, you also mass produce your barrels as well. I've seen your socials where you're just like spending a week just smashing them out. And you're like, on your socials, like, oh, I found it on 70. I found it on 100. And you're like, oh, they're all done. Stop annoying me, everybody.
Yes, I'm a very temperamental manufacturer of my own stuff. Like, I'm, like, I've got 2 sides to my manufacturing. Like, there's the stuff that I make myself, and that's your stuff like your barrels, your scars, your breeches. And then there is the mass-produced side of things, like the supercores, the Spectre Armaments, and those ones are a little bit more intricate than what I can produce en masse. Yeah. And so it's very time-consuming to produce one of those, which is why I outsource that. Like I work in a CNC machining shop, and I had my first run of supercores manufactured through them. I had my second run of Spectre Armaments manufactured through them, and now I have a separate shop for personal and time reasons that I have a friend that works at, and he produces the supercores and the Spectre Armaments, and that takes a lot of the weight off of the manufacturing for me, because as long as my drawings are right and the person on the other end of the machine understands what my drawing is, which has been a problem in the past, I can actually get the parts made the way I want them to.
Yep.
And CNC is a very big and very interesting industry in its own right, because what might work easily in one machine shop might not work so easily in another, and it's all dependent on the capabilities of the machines. And this year alone, I've had to really evaluate how I can best communicate what I want without compromising what I want in the process to the people that I'm getting made. And that's a challenge of being an engineer. Like I have to make sure that the person making my stuff knows what I want and how I want it, and they have to be able to produce it the way I want it for me to keep doing it. So the last run of Supercores went mostly smoothly, and I'm glad for it. And
there was a couple of quality control issues I think I saw on that one. Yeah,
I had a couple of reworks that I needed to do, but after communications with the engineer of the shop, they were able to at least sort it out, and hopefully the next run should move a little bit more smoothly again. So as a personal thing, like I like to assemble the cores myself. So even though it's made out of house, it is still assembled in house. And with the help of a couple of mates, we basically knocked it out we knocked out 150 Supercore full assemblies in one 8-hour shift.
Nice. I hope you bought them a couple of beers afterwards.
I bought them lunch, so I did at least repay the favor, and they were very kind about it. Like they have said before, if you need anything, let me know. And you always feel bad calling in favors, but they were more than happy to do it, and I'm very grateful for the help I've had. Like one of them understood my mechanism well enough that he and I could both QC as we went, and it made the whole process a lot easier on us.
Yep. Well, that's a good coverage of all your products at the moment. Now, I wanted to touch on your opinions, because seeing your socials lately, you've had a bit of a discussion with a few individuals on Nerf versus gels, and I just wanted to get your feedback on your opinion of gels in the community.
Gel ball is a contentious subject no matter how you broach it, because the minute you try and speak foul of it, be it constructive or not with your criticism, there will be people that will get up in arms because the fact that they think they are entitled to it. And I'm sure you're aware of the kind of people I'm referring to when I say that. Of course,
yes.
And
I mean, with my personal opinion on it, I don't have a problem with gels. As gel blasters, I don't have a problem with them. In my opinion, as long as they look like toys. So the white ones, the yellow ones, they're bright colors, I don't have a problem with them. The things I have an issue with is the full milsim. But if you're into milsim, that's cool. If you have a private field, go for your life. But for me personally, we play a lot of public places where we're not allowed to have pretty much anything completely black or realistic. To have something that looks like a real steel weapon from afar, of course, that's something that puts me off. But if it's a private field, no problems with it. But for our space, not a big fan. I mean, do you have something similar when you host matches?
Absolutely. Like, we have a few different war types in Brisbane. We've had public, we've had private, we've had semi-private. Like, there is a very big consciousness of public presence with Nerf. I know it's definitely not just limited to yours and my groups, because, Sydney, Melbourne, they've had to deal with, the police being called on their events. So it's a fairly universal topic, especially when you're talking about toys. You have to remember that the public perception of what you're doing is so important to the longevity of your hobby. And this isn't limited to Nerf. It's limited to every hobby. You look at drones, like something completely different. Like, drones is a great example of public perception, because FPV cameras are such a big thing in drones for, ease of, seeing what you're doing. And people can very easily misconstrue that as, a violation of their privacy, when the person operating the drone might not have even intended to do such a thing. The same can be said for Nerf with, like, or gel ball with, public perception of realistic blasters. We are operating, items that discharge projectiles. There is a possibility that anything that we use can be mistaken as a firearm, whether or not it is. So it's up to us as custodians of our hobby, and everyone is a custodian of the hobby if they're participating in a public space, to operate in a manner that the public deems acceptable. If
Yes,
the
I agree
public
with
doesn't
that.
deem
Yeah.
you acceptable, you shouldn't be doing it. So, I can walk around with this in public and people are going to think it's a toy. It's way higher velocity than any toy you can buy in Kmart.
Yeah.
And it's way more versatile. But people aren't going to think that because it looks like a big old toy.
Yep.
So, if gel ballers want to play their games, then they need to discard the toxic section of the hobby that focuses solely on, being a man and being,
I'm in the
Call
army
of Duty
now.
soldiers.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a hobby. If you want to say that it's a toy, then treat it like a toy, not a firearm. That's where this comes down to. Like, people, got upset with me because I said as much, and then I said, no, I don't have a problem with the blaster. If the blaster is used in a private setting, you're all playing milsim in a private setting, and no one in the public is going to be, affected by your actions, then that's fine. But if you're running around looking like you're, a school shooter, a terrorist, if you look like you will be out of place because that's the way you think you're having fun, and it's going to scare the public, that's a problem.
It is. I mean, look at South Australia. Look what's happened there. I mean, I don't want gels to be banned. I think what South Australia government maybe is overreached a tiny bit, but, they could regulate it a bit better. But how they've gone about it in their firearms license, all that type of thing, it's way overboard.
Well, I'm not going to speak for South Australia, but speaking as someone, that's been in the hobby and, seen projectile hobbies for a long time, like, South Australia had an issue, I think in about 2014, like late 2014, where someone was arrested for possession of airsoft firearms. They had converted a bunch of Nerf blasters into airsoft firearms. Now, you and I can understand why that's a problem, but the gel ballers are going to face a very similar problem now because of it. And that's because of, yes, possibly government overreach. If the South Australia government had approached it a different way and tried to make them consider it to be more of a toy, like how Queensland has, like, basically, you got to be a part of a club to use it and all that, then that'd probably be a better way of approaching it. I do agree. It's probably a little bit of an overreach from South Australia, but if you try and look at it from a government legislator perspective, like, they saw people treating toys like firearms. So they said, well, if you want to treat it like a firearm, then we're going to make you treat it completely like a firearm. And that I don't say it justifies it, but it does at least make sense why.
Yeah. Well, you've recently, just to change the subject, you've recently come back from a bit of a hiatus and you've enjoyed your break, I'm assuming. Just you just chilling out, not having to fill in orders, but you've recently started up again and you've been inundated with orders at the moment.
So
well, that's a good thing.
It was great. Like, not even half an hour into announcing that I was back, I got one order that was already $250. So like,
nice.
my parts, and I enjoy, when I want to make my parts, I enjoy making them. So that's really what this is to me. It's love of the hobby and love of being part of it. If I am working myself too hard and I'm not enjoying it, then it's not easy for me to keep working. And I needed the break, even though I didn't get much of one. And it's, if I'm back and I'm doing it and people are supporting me and they're patient with me, then it's very easy for me to, to do this kind of work. Funny enough, like, I pretty much had 2 Supercore runs back to back while I was doing that manufacturing, because I had the first run, and then no sooner had I finished the first run, end of financial year clicked over, and I went, okay, well, I could probably do another one, and if I go retail only, I might be able to hold myself over to the end of to the end of the year, start of next year. So if the community has a want for something, it finds a way to get it. And with Supercores and barrels and whatnot, like, I don't want to keep people waiting too long, because the longer people wait for my stuff, the more likely they are to either go somewhere else or try and make it themselves. And HPA as an industry, especially when it comes to supercores, is like, it's something that I have the ability to help people get without hurting themselves for doing it themselves, and possibly risking it, possibly risking their life or their livelihood in the wrong ways. And I can help, so I will. And even though I took a break from making stuff for a while, my customer service was still open. So I had, I had messages almost daily from people asking, where can I get super cores, or, how does this work, or this isn't working. Can you help me? And customer service is still such a big thing, no matter whether or not you're doing all the back end work. The front end work never stops. Blaster Tech will attest to that. He's fielded questions from me in overtime on 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and he's messaging me and they're like, it's beer o'clock, I gotta go. So he's probably one of my customer service goals, because he's been such a big name in Australia for so long, and because of people like him made me want to do better at my own customer service. So I might have taken a break from making, but I'll never take a break from serving, because if the community needs me, just even if it is just for words of encouragement or, a little bit of a help on a project, then, I can do that. 2 minutes of my time to save someone half an hour is a worthy investment.
And then potentially getting the wrong information for Google as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem I find, I guess, with that is some of the things that people come to me with is stuff that I did 3 years ago, and I go, oh, that's outdated. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So, I like the community and I like the support that I've had, and I want to keep giving back to them. So, returning from hiatus to continue doing this work was something that I was ready to do, and something that I'm still glad to be doing. So thank you to all those that, have decided to watch this and have supported me. And, thanks for bearing with my grumpy times and my escapades of, finishing everything off on Facebook and, taking a break from work, because the more I can do, end of the year, I want to have this as a public platform. That's my end goal right now.
And I can't wait to get my hands on one of them. So when are you shipping me one? Just one future purpose.
I'm not saying I can't. I'm just saying, what do your laws think about that?
Mate, and I saw on your socials of the day, you've challenged Blastify scars with another scar that you designed, the brass one. Anything you want to add to that type of challenge, that throwdown?
Send it to me. Realistically, I feel that Blastify is a relatively new company. Am I wrong in that?
No, you are correct. They are very new.
Yeah, so they've come out with a very unique product that competes with both myself and Blaster Tech in two completely different ways, and yet simultaneously combines both.
Yep.
That's excellent. I love it. It again demonstrates to me the possibilities of the community, something that, Blaster Tech nor I could do. Well, I mean, I could do it, but they do it better, so I don't need to. And it's a healthy competition, but at the same time, I don't feel like I am competing with them. I want to see them grow. And part of me throwing out that challenge was not, any form of, there was no malice in it at all. I actually have a lot of respect for what they've already done in such a short time. And I would love to, see them grow. So me saying something like that out loud, because my reach is already a little bit higher than theirs, people will check them out because I threw out the challenge. And if they meet the challenge, then it's a reciprocal thing. A, they're listening, B, they're answering, and C, it's community involvement.
Exactly.
So everyone wins from friendly challenges. And I like being, I mean, it's not drama per se, but I like starting drama occasionally. That's a little friendly,
It's a friendly poke.
Exactly. Yeah. Give it a poke and see what it does.
And it's good to, challenge Blastify to meet those expectations and push their products even higher.
Absolutely. If they match the standard that they've already done with something completely different, aluminium and brass machine completely different, as just a side note. That's why I threw it down like that. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do as a company as they grow, because they've already answered, if they do it, they've already answered me, and I'm a stickler. If they can answer me, they can answer anyone.
Mate, well, I'm sure they'll meet the challenge when they can. But I think we're going to call it there. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your patience in talking to me. And hopefully we can chat again sometime soon. So thanks very much.
It's been a pleasure, James. Thank you for having me.
No problems. Catch you, mate.
Take care.